Thank you all so much for inviting me here. It's very difficult to say no to Dr. Vikrant. I tried, but now I'm glad I didn't stay back, because the vibrations of this place, it's something that one can only experience and not elucidate much about. Being the last speaker in any session is not very easy. And I only have myself to blame for just coming in late, and my apologies for that. There's a very famous saying in English, when you have a panel and so many speakers, the saying goes like this: you listen to the first, you tolerate the next, and throw out all the rest. So, before I get thrown out, the chair has indicated to me 20 minutes. I hope to be less than that, hopefully. One of the current roles that I play is in the Capacity Building Commission of the Government of India. It's a very unique commission set up by the Honorable Prime Minister, and it's called the Mission Karmayogi. The name itself possibly communicates how public service in India is now trying to be, in a sense, spiritualized. And if I can use the phrase that he often tells us, is one, he calls himself Pradhan Sevak. But more importantly, he tells us that all those in public service should move away from the Karmachari Bhav. I'm just an employed servant of the government. Even that is a big success if they believe that they're public servants. But from Karmachari to becoming a Karmayogi. That is Mission Karmayogi. Now, from a westernized view of public administration, which is where my formal training comes from, to Indianizing it is a long journey. So I was asking Vikrant, what should I speak about? Because they're all such accomplished people sitting in this audience. And there's also a very famous saying in Kannada: you can't carry well water to the Kaveri river. You're all Kaveri here for me, and then I can't carry well water to you. So you already know everything I'm going to speak, but I'm just going to share what little I can. Now, when we look at public officers or public service, when we describe this to our students, we break it up into and students always like things to be easy to remember. We live in a generation where I just finished my teaching at Cornell and I'm back, and I was talking to some of my young undergrad students, and I was asking them, the class is 75 minutes. Obviously, none of you are going to pay attention to me for 75 minutes. What is the maximum time you people can pay attention? And they were very honest. They said, we can only pay as much attention as a TikTok video's length, which possibly is today 10 seconds to 15 seconds. And so if we cannot communicate in 15 seconds what you want, so giving 20 minutes itself is too long now. But I have a choice nor you, so we will have to spend the 20 minutes together. So how do we look at it and explain to them how public administration can be seen? We break it into 3 W's. The first W, and I'd like to use this talk and framework to explain where does spirituality come in all this? Where does consciousness come in all this? The first W is what we say is work, karma. What do we do? What am I here to do? What am I here to do in public administration? The second is where you operate this work in, the workplace. So work always gets done in a workplace. These kind of conferences happen in an auditorium. And the third is who is the person doing the work in this workplace, the worker or the work person. So the 3 W's, we see it as separate entities. And that is what a Karmachari is. Karmachari leaves home in the morning. If you ask him what are you doing, he will say, I am a joint secretary in Government of India. So he goes to his office in the ministry of, let's say, some agriculture ministry. So he can define his workplace. He can define himself, the worker, as a joint secretary, And he will say the work is, I am working in the government of India. Now that is a karmachari. It's very easy for us to understand. That's what traditionally all of us understand. But what is this journey of becoming a karmayogi? Because these are all fashion statements nowadays, because everybody likes to use these words without deconstructing them or understanding them. So what we have tried to do is see if we can actually make it practical for somebody. Because the moment you say spirituality today, it's as though it is only for people in the ochre robes or in the ashrams, or after you're 60 plus, when life has already given you a lot of trouble, you want to suddenly think of God. We don't see it embedded in our very existence from birth, or in at least the way we believe it, we just have no birth. We just don't see it embedded in our existence itself. So in this kind of reality of life, where spirituality is something to be acquired or separate from us, separating workplace and work person is a beginning point. Because if we talk of, and in a polarized world that we live in, anything spiritualized is equated to saffronization and all the politics that goes with it. I don't want to get in there. But my view is, how do you get this beautiful way of describing this? I cannot think of anybody other than Swami Vivekananda who described it so beautifully when he gave this mandate to the Ramakrishna mission that he set up. He said, Atmano mokshartham jagat hitayacha. Now you cannot get a more classical and a more wondrous expression and a mandate for all of us. Why do we take this human life? Obviously, all of us will say to attain salvation, to attain moksha. But whose benefit is moksha? In a world which is separated, moksha might be to discover the oneness of all mankind, the interconnectedness and oneness. That's great. But then poverty is not going to disappear, hunger is not going to disappear, corruption is not going to disappear. All those separations and those identities, though called illusory in an experiential way, are real for a lot of people, for those people. And in that space, he said it so beautifully, just your moksha is meaningless. He said you cannot go sit in Himalayas in a cave and meditate if the rest of the world doesn't benefit from that expression of that spirituality. So for him, the Atma's moksha, along with that our mandate should be Jagat's hita, the goodness of humanity itself. Now in this one statement is embedded possibly what we are trying to do and what I'm going to share here. But he also was one of the first few who said, India is the only civilization possibly, I'm not an expert in other civilizations, can't claim to be, but what little I have read is we not only invested a life and time and energy on appreciating the external nature outside. So India could talk of trigonometry to algebra to zero to the binary system to metallurgy to chemistry, mastering the external sciences. But along with that, we are the only civilization which invested on mastering the internal sciences too. So the rare combination of unification of, and we separated it more for human existence because the outside benefits, the inside is Atmano Mokshartham, the outside is Jagat Hita. But over time, colonization including, our focus and the way we measure our country's progress is in GDPs and all that. So we start looking at ourselves as only the external manifestations without recognizing there's an internal evolution that needs to happen. So for me, in one of my earlier books I write, The Leadership Lessons for Daily Living, I see leadership, and you can call it public leadership in the context in which I'm speaking now, is possibly the expression of that spiritual evolution. So leadership is not just, and it's unfortunate the Western world is credited with discovering leadership. I can even quote a specific example. In the 30s, Robert Greenleaf published Servant Leadership. And he has been given all the credit. But in 1897, Vivekananda spoke of servant leadership. But unfortunately, he doesn't get credit. But India always lived servant leadership. And that is why it belongs to all of us. And you can't give one author the credit for it. But in 60s, Harvard gets the credit because Harvard Business School published it. And so they all think that came from there. But I say this not out of anything else. Because for leadership in the West, it's always about being a leader. It was the I which got the manifestation, the representation. I am the leader. I am the leader of this country. I'm the director of this institution. But India articulated it so beautifully differently. And I'm glad Professor Jain spoke before me, because most of the foundations of what I speak, he already said. That is why you have to throw out the rest, because everybody else speaks about it. India speaks not about being a leader, but India speaks about exercising leadership. If you look at Krishna, he was never a leader, he was a charioteer. But the exercise of leadership is what we celebrate, and spirituality is leadership in action. As much as exercising leadership is an opportunity for evolving spiritually. So it's so beautifully interconnected. And so for us, this whole process of transitioning from Karmachari to Karmayogi is to lead a government public servant from appreciating that his work is just an expression of the role that he has to perform. And how do you get him to do that? Is to begin this journey. And to me, leadership in the space I'm defining it, if you look at Vivekananda and his understanding, it's about getting to understand oneself. This journey of self-awareness and the journey of understanding oneself. Because if I don't understand myself, I can never see myself in the other and the other in me. So interconnectedness is a myth. If I don't begin the journey by first understanding myself. And leadership to me is the journey of understanding oneself, understanding the other, and the actions that bind the self to the other. Because in a Vyavaharic plane, I have to seem to be serving. And that service means that I'm separating the other, but without forgetting that in the act of service, I discover that I am the other. So for us, Karmachari to Karmayogi is leading a person from the separation of work, workplace, and work person to experiencing that I am the work, I am the workplace, and I am the work person too. Now, getting that oneness is that real spirit of united consciousness. And I believe this journey to materialize that is going to be meaningful for society too. Humanity will benefit. If public servants operate in that space of that oneness, just imagine how beautifully wonderful every country would be. Because there would be no other at all. And so that is a spiritual evolution. Seeing the other is leadership, but becoming the one is that evolution. And it takes time. And in this, I again want to go back to what Swami Vivekananda said. And he says it so beautifully. When we use the word seva. You know, I always, whenever I travel to the West, and now that's become a fashion statement here too. When you open the door for somebody, you say thank you. Now if somebody opens the door, try not saying anything to him. And if you ask somebody who observes this event, they'll say, how uncultured he is, how impolite he is. Can't he even say thank you? Or I drop my pen and somebody picks it up and gives it to me. I just take the pen and go away. The others will say, how thankless that person is. Can't he even say thank you? So that is, in the West, the way it's interpreted is I can help somebody, but help is transactional, because in the conditionality of helping is an expectation of a thank you. But seva is so beautiful. Swami Vivekananda says, and I always believe he wrote it for people like me, all the hospitals you build, all the schools you construct can get washed away in one cyclone or can get crumbled to dust in one earthquake. So don't think that you are the doer, but consider yourself privileged that you are an instrument of what is getting done. And this, in seva, it's embedded this concept where I am not helping anybody, I expect nothing in return. But it's very difficult to inspire myself and I expect nothing in return. In a world which is measured by incentives and disincentives, in an economic framework where man is always has to be having a driver of his existence, when you tell somebody in public servant, you are expected to get nothing but just serve, they will say, अरे बात promotion के बात कीजिए ना, हमारे इंक्रीमेंट के बारे में बात कीजिए, ये क्या होता है, सर्विस तो करेंगे लेकिन वो भी होना चाहिए. And I've been told that. So that is the beauty of Indianness. It's about Atmano Mokshartam. It says, look at the divinity in the other, and what you're doing is just doing pranam to that divinity. You're not even serving. So if you can elevate your act from thinking that I am doing something for the other, to going deeper and saying, I am celebrating the divinity in the other. It will take some time. That is Dvaita. It is still separate. But at some point of time, as you evolve this, as you exercise in this gymnasium called the world that we have today, you'll reach a point where there's neither the other nor the self, and you become one with it. And that is what is real seva. So when the Prime Minister says Pradhan Sevak, this is the attitude that he wants every Indian to get. And if he can serve this motherland in the role appreciation, that my role is to serve humanity. And in that role, I find an opportunity to evolve myself. And how will that change look like? And I have tried to do some putting together of material and some research, and hopefully that book will come out in under 2-3 months from now, is people start manifesting some qualities when they start practicing this in real life. First is you find them enormous faith in them, and faith is a very incomplete description of Shraddha. I don't know how else to say it, like Seva, we can never capture the meanings. I can give the diacritics and write about it, but then the real meaning of Shraddha is so deep and so powerful. You will be surprised at the kind of faith they have. And like Vivekananda said, not faith in everybody else in the system, but faith in themselves, that inner space, that inner power that we have in each one of us. And that expression of that inner power is what brings that faith. And Swami Sarvapriyanji of the Ramakrishna Mission explains it so beautifully. He says, these people demonstrate in that Shraddha, you can pick it up because they know why they exist. They found the purpose of life, and they're extremely effective in recognizing that purpose, in articulating that purpose, in living that purpose. Self-efficacy, he says, is one way of measuring that Shraddha. He's trying to, and when he talks to an American audience, he puts it in a way in which the Americans can also appreciate it. The second, he says, people who have Shraddha also are responsible. So self-responsibility comes. The expression of the self is self-efficacy, self-responsibility, and more importantly, he says, they don't need to be monitored or told in the morning what to do. They are self-directed. So he says, Shraddha is not just a word. He says it's embodied with these qualities, and that's a very powerful way they bring about change in themselves. Second, you find these people filled with hope. They'll never think that tomorrow will be a disaster. They'll never worry about, because for them there is no tomorrow. They are so much in the present, in the here and now, that if you are in the tomorrow, then you are still in that journey beginning. But if you are experiencing it as the oneness of mankind in that present, in the here and now, hope is so full of, they're full of hope. The third is they're extremely positive. Today, Western psychology recognizes positive emotional activators and negative emotional activators, and how our mirroring neurons can mirror our emotions to others. India has always said satsang. So beautiful. If you're in a room of satsangis, how can you think of anything else? How can you not but be hopeful and so positive? So positive expression, we can measure it harmoniously today. And that is, these kind of people are such powerful communicators of positivism. In their presence, you can never think anything negative even. More importantly, they understand spirituality, and it's so beautifully defined by Professor Jain when he spoke. But it is to me a very simplistic thing. Like Ramana Maharishi said, the simple question of who am I? And elevating yourself to that witness consciousness, that observer status, gives you the opportunity for you to appreciate that spirituality is nothing but a space of constant self-enquiry. Asking yourself, who am I? Why am I born? Why did I even come here? And physically, it was quite a challenge for me. As explained Dr. Vikrant, the last 1 week has been a strange coincidence for me. I can proudly say I was in a different Indian city every day. But on one sense, the body can get tired, but the spirit doesn't. And that energy comes because satsang. Practicing that self-enquiry. Why am I here? What am I doing? And more importantly, though Buddhism and Hinduism both jointly share the credit for this, and instead of spending time who discovered it first, this practice of mindfulness, the drishti bhav that we need to get, and that constant observation of ourselves. Am I really in the Dvaita stage, or am I really moving towards an evolution? I know I've just finished my time. I'll take a minute more. But what is so powerfully articulated, and Vivekananda says it so beautifully, abhihi, 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 he says. Fearlessness. Now, Western psychology can only talk of courage. Courage is just how well you cope with fear. But Indians' thought is about transcending fear itself. And that is fearlessness. That is the abhihi that we speak about. Whether it's Jainism or Buddhism or Hindu thought, it's so powerful. all these characteristics starts manifesting. And that is when you understand that the real inner power is unleashed. And such people are the torchbearers of social change, are the torchbearers of taking away all the filth in this world. And so they are the people who can see the silver lining in every dark cloud. And they are the ones who have the hope. They can constantly undertake karma yoga without any expectation in return and keep expanding that silver lining till the dark clouds of despair is driven away from us. So to me, that expression of inner wisdom and that experience of united consciousness must have a Jagat Hita. Otherwise, there's no meaning in such meetings for us, all of us, to come together. And these kind of conferences offers us the time, the reflective space to go beyond just the talking that we do, to sit quietly and think about all this and express it in our daily lives. Namaste.